Hello and welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express Papers Chandigarh edition. As always, I have listed the topics that we are covering at the top. Now let me elaborate as to which all topics seem to be important. We need to prioritize. So recently we had this PM of Nepal meeting Xi Jinping. And in that reference, we have certain terms, some initiatives of China, that is Global Security Initiative, Global Civilizational Initiative, Global Developmental Initiatives. So these we should know. Then we have a speech from Mr. Jaishankar, External Affairs Minister at UNGA. This provides us certain insights about India's foreign policy. Then something which may be important for mains, recently the Indian Oil Company ran some experiments or trials of running public buses on fuel cells. So this article tells us India's priorities with reference to fuel cells, green hydrogen, as well as the infrastructural challenges. This may be important 150-word question GS3. Okay. Other than that, from the editorial opinion section, we have One Nation, One Election. So an article on this, but it's basically telling us about the experience of other countries. We really didn't get much. I'll just give you a brief overview of this article. On similar lines, we have an article concerning women reservation bill. So this one is telling us the experience of other countries in providing for greater representation of women in legislatures, and they have not resorted to reserving the constituencies. So this not important, but we should have an idea. Next is this article, Gender Gaps in Healthcare. This is based on a report issued by Lancet. So Lancet has provided us with some information which says that a lot of deaths amongst women could have been avoided, cancer-related deaths, if timely treatment was done, diagnosis was done. Now this provides us an insight about overall gender bias, patriarchy, discrimination in the healthcare sector. This seems to be important from society point of view, GS1. If we add policy making as part of it, so GS2 as well, but it should be more of GS1. Then then we have the explainer section. There is one on delimitation. It's more of inclined towards politics, but it was interesting. So I'm covering it in brief. Then, in social media, you may have heard about this issue about this famous Instagram channel known as Humans of Bombay. So it has put a case against Peoples of India, another channel, on the grounds of substantial imitation and passing off. So this also, we should know these terms, basic idea we must have. Now moving ahead with today's news. So first of all, the international section. China refuses to expand China-Pakistan Economic Corridor terms with Pakistan. So let us first understand the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, what it is, and what are India's objections to this project, and then we will come to the terms with Pakistan, what this article is telling us. So it's very simple. This is India. This is Kashmir. Now China has this initiative known as Belt and Road Initiative, which is modeled on China's ancient Silk route, connecting China to Europe. Now this Belt and Road Initiative will have a branch. It will have a branch going through Pakistan and entering into Arabian Sea. And by this, it means the Indian Ocean region. Now this line reflects Pakistan also, right? So it will be passing through Pakistan. But in that process, it will first pass through Jammu and Kashmir, or Pakistan occupied Kashmir, which India claims as its. Right. So India's problem with this project, one of the main problem is that India says that it is passing through the Kashmir, which is an Indian territory, even though it is occupied by Pakistan. So China is not being sensitive to India's concerns around its sovereignty. On that ground, India is objecting to it. Besides, they have a problem that this CPEC that goes through, it will end at this, it will pass through the Balochistan province of Pakistan, and at the end, at the terminal point, there is this Gwadar port. So it ends at the Gwadar port. India is concerned that this will mean more Chinese presence on India's vicinity in the Indian Ocean region. Besides, there is every possibility of naval, nuclear presence, nuclear weapons presence in India's close vicinity. So India sees it as a national security threat. In fact, India sees this entire project as part of China's policy of containing India and developing a string of pearls around India. String of pearls mean series of Chinese ports encircling India. The idea of containing India. Okay, so we have discussed what is CPEC. It's a branch of the Belt and Road Initiative passing through Kashmir. We have discussed this. It ends at Gwadar Port, which is in Pakistan, and in Balochistan province. Simple. There was a mains-based question, I think 2016, with reference to India's objections to the CPEC. Okay. Now, with this initiative, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, I'm doing the article. So it is not just a connectivity project. Like this does not have rail or road, merely this thing. It will have a lot of other projects also. For example, it will have power plants, right? So power plants would be there, water management, so energy is power plants only. So all these things would also be developed in the vicinity, industrial complexes. So that will also be built. So now Pakistan wants from China that the scope of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor should be expanded to include more things. So China is saying that we cannot do it, right? Pakistan wants more. China says no. Why? Because most likely because China is putting money in Pakistan. Pakistan has to pay back. We all know Pakistan is debt ridden. It doesn't have money to pay back. So that may be the reason. So this is signaling a strain in the friendship between all-weather friends. Next, we come to this article concerning Nepal, China. So yesterday we talked that Nepal's Prime Minister will be meeting Xi Jinping. In this image, it is not shown Xi Jinping, but otherwise it is mentioned that he held talks with Xi. Now, as part of the meeting, imagine Nepal China meet, they will normally send a joint declaration that these were the outcomes of our meeting. So that they will do. Now, China was hoping that Nepal would agree to some of the initiatives of China, namely Global Security Initiative, Global Civilizational Initiative, and Global Developmental Initiatives. So these three they were expecting. By the way, in this news article, it says Global Cultural Initiative, right? So Global Cultural Initiative, I could not find it. I really searched for it. What I could find was, what is the US government doing? So US government has a Global Cultural Initiative. Chinese have Global Civilizational Initiative. So I've taken the liberty of writing Global Civilizational Initiative. So we have these three initiatives of China. Nepal only agreed to Global Developmental Initiatives. Simple. Okay. So let us first cover Global Developmental Initiative, then Global Security, and then Global Civilization Initiative. So what is Global Developmental Initiative? You see, China has this Belt and Road Initiative, right? It will pass through various countries, and in those countries, developmental projects, infrastructure projects will go on. Right? So China would be investing in it. Now, China says that these things should be done in a sustainable manner, keeping in line the goals of Sustainable Developmental Goals 2030. So that is global developmental initiatives. So this complements the Belt and Road Initiative. Now I was reading some additional, so with this initiative, a Global Development Initiative, it's basically in line with the SDGs, but there is no timeline. there is no defined financial goal or anything of that sort has not been specified. So there is this issue in this. Now, the Chinese have this global development initiative. At the same time, that this was in September 2021, US President Joe Biden at the G7 summit announced Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, PGII, which is focusing on creating an alternative arrangement to China's Belt and Road Initiative. And this focuses on bringing in sustainable development, clean development. It also focuses on addressing the issue of, this debt trap diplomacy. So that to be avoided. Debt trap diplomacy is associated with China. Okay, so Global Development Initiative, some additional reading also we did. Moving on. What is this Global Security Initiative and Civilizational Initiatives which Nepal did not sign? So first one, Global Security Initiative. I shared with you in the morning on the Telegram the Wikipedia page on Global Security Initiative. So this is based on the doctrine of indivisible security. Indivisible security is actually associated with NATO. NATO is for Europe, collective security doctrine. So it says that attack on any country of the NATO, any country is attacked, it means an attack on the entire bloc. So Global Security Initiative is again premised on indivisible security. That is, if China has pact with them, so any attack on them would be seen as attack on the entire bloc, indivisible security. It aims at providing a security architecture for Asia as a whole, led by the Chinese. So this is the Global Security Initiative. Besides, there's a call for respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries. Imagine China saying it, right? So in China doesn't respect India's sovereignty and territorial integrity, or for that matter, 9-dash line also. Okay. Abiding by the purpose and principles of UN Charter, security concerns of all countries seriously, right? So these are things which China itself does not take it seriously. The main thing I wanted to discuss was uphold the principle of indivisible security and security architecture for Asia. That was my focus. So China would be leading this. Next, Global Civilizational Initiative. So Global Civilizational Initiative. So I couldn't find it. I had to use the Bing, that AI thing. Okay. So it's basically premised on China's doctrine of non-interference. And it is for modern regimes with traditional cultures like China. Right? So China, we can also talk about India, we can talk about Iran, Saudi Arabia. So they're modern regimes, present-day regimes, but they have traditional cultures. Maybe Africa also. So it says non-interference, not affecting sovereignty of any country. So other world countries, like for example, it's targeted at US, that US tells other countries that you should have this policy, you should do this policy, you are affecting the human rights are getting affected. So we will engage in a war or we will impose sanctions on you. So it's actually a retort on that world countries should not interfere in domestic matters of other countries. So that is the main thing. So, and sanctions and other things should not be there. So this includes, so this would have an appeal with African nations. African nations are a victim of this US policy. Saudi Arabia, Iran is affected by this US sanctions and that dress covering of the face and all those things. So this will have appeal over there. Now, one of the shortcomings with the Global Civilizational Initiative is that critics argue that the relativism of values and opposition, calling out bad behavior, can enable regimes to pursue their own interests without being held accountable. For example, Chinese, the issue with the Hong Kong, right, the democracy not being there, US talking about it, or let's say the Uyghurs getting affected. The Muslim community in the western Xinjiang province, there is Uyghurs, so they're human rights. So US talking about it. So according to this is China's internal matters. They should be looking into it. Others should not condemn China. Okay, so these were the three doctrines. Now we come to the front page. We'll not have so much explaining now. Okay. So we have something about simultaneous polls. Simultaneous polls, you should understand by now that simultaneously collecting, conducting elections for Lok Sabha as well as the state legislative assemblies. And for that purpose, we have the Kovind committee. So that was already formed. Now, law panel, the 22nd Law Commission, LC, which is headed by Justice Rituraj Avasthi, retired Justice Rituraj Avasthi. This will also look into the issue of simultaneous polls. So they will now, they will also submit their report, and Kovind panel will look into it. So that's all we have on this thing. I'm not discussing simultaneous election today. Next, this is from the speech of External Affairs Minister Mr. Jaishankar at the United Nations General Assembly. Here there are two things. There are two things being discussed. One is India's defense on this Hardeep Nijjar issue, right? And his style, Mr. Jaishankar's, is to go on the offensive. And the other thing is achievement of India's, the good things India has done for the world community. So let me cover this since you're already here. So India's vaccine diplomacy, he referred to disaster relief to Turkey, Syria, aid to Sri Lanka during the economic crisis, right? And having the successful conduct of the G20, as well as having a agreeable, amiable declaration, New Delhi declaration. So all these are the achievements that have been listed. Now what I've done is I've summarized all these points over here. So let's cover this one by one. The offensive that the minister went into. So he says on terror, response to terror, that political convenience of nations cannot determine response to terror. Now this statement includes, China, Pakistan, right? So for their political convenience, a certain act is terror while something is not. Right? If it is inflicting pain on India, then it is not terror. In fact, they will support it. But if it is within their own country, then it is terror. So political convenience cannot determine response to terror. So it is applicable to them. But without naming Canada or the other G7 countries, he says that rule makers, he gives a reference of rule makers. So this is pointing to the G7 because G7 sets the agenda for be it UN, be it G20, be it anything. So even for the rule makers, he is giving a reference. So this is with reference to Canada, that Canada's for its political convenience, right? It is soft on the Khalistan issue. So that is not right. Second, he makes a case of the expansion of the United Nations Security Council, right? It has 5 permanent members and 10 temporary members. So expansion of this, more representation should be here. That this is now being, dominated by the rule makers. So we should have more representation. We should have the voice of the global South. So all that he referred to. He also complained about the rules makers that they act according to their own convenience. So they made the rules also. For example, with vaccines, they had the COVAX program. So vaccines to be distributed equally in the right ratio. No country will reserve for itself. But when the crisis took place, the developed countries tried to keep the vaccines as much as possible with themselves. So vaccine apartheid, not giving it to the lesser developed nations. So once their requirement was met, then only they did it. Okay. Then historical responsibilities for climate actions. So that should also be taken into account. Historical responsibilities. Who are responsible for the climate action? G7, the industrialized nations, the developed countries. So these were the main points that he said. Now this talks about India's foreign policy, as I said in the introduction. It reflects a more assertive India, more vocal, right? So we're not on the defensive, but we are on the offensive when it comes to diplomacy in the recent times. So that's it actually. Okay, one last this thing from the front page. We have this council meeting, North Zone Council. So zonal councils you may have heard in the Lakshmikant book. So zonal councils where the North Zone meeting was taking place. So states of North Zone were there. So they discussed these issues. Here we have only viewpoint of Punjab and actually also Haryana. Now what I want to do is, one is I want to discuss the zonal councils. So zonal council is a part of center-state relations, how to manage their relations, and zonal councils are chaired by the Home Minister. No matter which state, it is chaired by the Home Minister. And zonal councils are statutory bodies. It has its basis in the State Reorganization Act. Right. So these are important points. Now here we have issues concerning Punjab, but we can also look at the overall issues of federalism, center-state issues, the issue a state has with the center as well as other states. So these come under the federal issues, center-state relations, so that we can look. So one common issue is interstate river water dispute. In this case, it is about Punjab giving water from the Satluj River to linking it with Yamuna, which will go to Haryana, Delhi, that region. So Satluj Yamuna link. But interstate river water, you can see it with reference to any interstate river. Today we have about Kaveri, so tension between Kaveri and Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Likewise with Krishna River. So which depending on the region, you will have that news. Then Punjab is a border state, and there is a deployment of paramilitary forces like BSF, etc. So state is required to make compensation to the center for deployment of the forces. This is a sore point. Now it's a border state, it's a national security issue. So the chief minister is saying, why should the state should bear the cost, why not the center? So that. Then we have the issue of a state capital of Chandigarh, right? That really doesn't concern all of you over here. It's about Chandigarh being given to Punjab. Okay. Then issue of tax revenues, money going from center to states and how much money should go. Then some of the money is pending, for example, not mentioned in this article, but otherwise, for example, the GST. So there are dues that the center is required to pay the states. It is not being happening. So such issues are there between center and states, fiscal matters. Yes. So basically, I wanted to discuss go into the center state issue. And last point, if you want to make it more holistic, you can always talk about the issue of governance. The issue of governor as acting as the agent of center and interfering in state affairs. So that can be there. The issue of the governor, the role of the governor, discretionary powers of the governor. So that can be there. Right. So there was one more I'm forgetting right now. Okay, let's move ahead. Now we have stubble burning. So let's quickly cover, the important points associated with stubble burning, what initiatives can be taken. So Punjab government, according to the center, Punjab is going to cut farm fires by 50% this year, says Center's Air Quality Board. Okay. Now, what initiatives can be done? So here, basically, two approaches are mentioned: in situ and ex situ. So in situ would mean, stubble. Of course, you understand, right? Paddy is grown. So let's say this is the plant on the field, and the grains are over here. So these are cut, and the remaining part is known as the stubble. So one approach could be that we can use these happy seeder machines, etc., which sow the seeds at the same time remove the stubble, or mixes this stubble into the ground. So this acts as this decomposes and refertilizes the soil. Or it can also be used as for mulching. That is just having this grass on the surface of the soil, covering the soil surface. So mulching. So anything of that sort can be done. Ex situ would mean processing the stubble. So maybe using this for making ethanol fuel, so processing it, decomposing it and making a fuel out of it, or making fodder out of it for livestock. So that can also be done. Or briquettes can be made for this thing, or for fuel. So that can be done. Right. So these are some of the initiatives. So fodder banks composing of paddy waste, happy seeder machines using briquettes, and also genetic crops can be used who have a shorter maturity period. Okay, this is the Madhya Pradesh ad about their tourism. So here, obviously, some pre-related information can be gotten. So here we have Shankaracharya. Recently, a statue was unveiled at Omkareshwar. Right. So I had discussed this. Then I shared with you just now the Bedghat, about this, the Bedghat region. So I had shared with you, this is a geo-heritage site. I am giving you this as homework, geo-heritage sites, which all geo-heritage sites are in India, so that you can do, right? This is the homework. So this link I had shared with you on the Telegram. Now we come to the editorial opinion page. We'll just, we'll quickly go through it. So it's nothing much except for that fuel cell thing. Okay. Who needs allies? This is basically with the BJP. BJP has allies. So, okay, why I'm doing it? Trends in politics, right? So trends. So we have a party which was initially it was requiring allies, the help of its friends to be relevant in states. But now we are seeing that they are having the enmity or the rivalry with their allies, ex-allies. So be it Shiromani Akali Dal in Punjab, be it JDU in Bihar, or be it most recently Tamil Nadu, the party of Jayalalitha, the former chief minister, AIADMK. Right, so they are going with this approach of going solo and not seeking the help of the allies. So that's it. Next is about the fuel cell. The title is better, right? So recently, Indian Oil Company, so they developed this hydrogen powered bus, right? So first green hydrogen powered bus. So this was developed. So yeah, so yesterday we covered this. So if you want to read basic details, you can get. So how much range is there, how many passengers can sit, so all that is there. So it's much more economical to run, more efficiency is there, 55% efficiency. Internal combustion engine is 12% around that. It has a low efficiency. I think 20% efficiency is there. Okay, so all that benefit is there, right? So with the fuel cell is basically electrolysis of water to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. So that is done through electrolysis. And green hydrogen means electricity, electrolysis means use of electricity to split. So green hydrogen means that green sources of electricity, renewable energy being used to split this thing. Now, obviously, when a vehicle is running on it, the tailpipe will have water. So coal combustion would mean fusion of hydrogen and oxygen getting water and as a byproduct. Okay, so this will obviously have zero environmental footprint. It will be from a clean source of energy. And as compared to lithium ion powered batteries, lithium is in scarce amount. Water is fairly abundant if you look at the seas. So that is there. So there are some benefits. Plus, the time to refuel for this is much lesser. For EVs, it will take around 10-12 hours to recharge it. But this, it can be refueled like CNG, right? So around 12 minutes it takes to refuel the car, and again it is running. And lithium, again, mining of lithium is a highly polluting process, while this is not so polluting. Now, what are the and yes, one more thing. Green hydrogen is also bereft of uncertainties of solar or wind energy. Solar or wind energies may be inconsistent, right? Sometimes there are more intensity of sunlight, sometimes less. Same applies for wind. Now, this can now be stored in the form of hydrogen. Hydrogen can be then combustion can take place, and again we can get energy. So it solves the problem of storage of electricity as well. Okay, now what are the issues? So it says it must develop expertise to overcome challenges. So challenge is that we need to augment renewable energy capacity. So as per estimates, we need 100 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity. To give you a context, at the moment, 2024, we are expecting that we will have 40 gigawatt of electricity by 2024. We need to have much more of renewable energy to be able to get this. So by 7 years, we should be able to do so. Okay, so that is one issue. Next is water stress. Okay, if we use seawater, then maybe it's fine, but otherwise we are a water stressed country. About half of our population is into water stress areas, so they don't have a good life. Now, if we use water to develop hydrogen, so it may lead to water scarcity. Then, one of the important initial parts of developing this fuel cell is electrolysis. So we need to augment the capacity of production of electrolyzers. Now, for this, we need rare earth minerals, and this will increase our dependency on China. So that these are the main issues. Besides, obviously, moving towards fuel cells, right? We need to have vehicles. So that should be there. Fossil fuels are obviously, we have fossil fuel running vehicles are there. Now we have EVs. Now we have fuel cell powered vehicles, and plus marketing, providing these fuel cells across the country. So that will require marketing challenge, logistical challenge that has to be developed. That infra should need be created. Okay. Next article, Bennu's gift. What is Bennu? Bennu is the asteroid. A small rock of the asteroid was picked up by a US NASA space aircraft known as Osiris Rex. So this went to the asteroid, a near Earth asteroid, Bennu, which is rich in carbon. So a small rock was picked up and has been para-dropped onto Earth. So it was dropped on the Utah Desert of USA. So this rock shall now be studied. So this gift is basically the rock that has been taken from Bennu asteroid. Now, why is this important? It is important because, we're studying something from the space. We will know about the composition, etc. And besides, it is rich in carbon, and carbon is seen to be one of the reasons why we have life on Earth. So it will tell us about something about how the Earth came about. So that we will know. And plus, this obviously is untouched for billions of years. So it will have those history. This secrets may be there covered in it. Next article. Okay, this one I'm not doing is an entity, not a commodity. This is about the Data Protection Act. I would feel that we don't have to go into so much of technicality. Merely knowing about Data Protection Act, right? That is sufficient enough. So this will take you a lot of time in analyzing. So not required. We have the PRS also. So from there we can analyze it. Okay. Other nations, other polls. This is about one nation, one election, experience of elections happening in other parts of the world. So yeah, so first reference was given for USA, which is a federal polity. So each state, I mean, there is no Lok Sabha, but there is a Congress. So the government is basically run by the president who's elected, and his government, he nominates them. And at the state level, state level, each state has its own cycles. Right. Next, UK. UK has a unitary system, so it doesn't make sense of the federal aspect over there. It's a different cycle for centers and states. It's a unitary government. Next is Canada. Canada is like India actually. It's a it's a federal polity with a bias towards the union government. So they tried one nation, one election. They brought in a law also, but they didn't provide for the dissolution of provinces. If the government collapses, then what happens? So that was not provided. So as a result, over the years, each state has their own independent cycle. Next is about Nepal. So Nepal, it says that if there is a dissolution, then in that case, there will be federal rule for 6 months. After that, again, election shall be taking place. Now, we have one nation, one election in Italy and Spain. But here, according to a research, it is seen that, combining the central elections with the state elections affects the voter behavior. So it clubs the national as well as state elections, the priorities together, which is not right. So it leads to contamination in that regard. However, if we look at in India's case, when we look at elections in Orissa taking place, the state we have the Biju Janata Dal, and the same state elects BJP for the center. Now coming to the Women's Reservation Act, no analysis of that sort is covered, just as to what are the alternative approaches elsewhere in the world. So let us first do what is the Women's Reservation Act doing in India's case. So Women's Reservation Act basically says that elections to Lok Sabha and the state legislative assemblies. So, let me put it, the seats in both the assemblies, 33% would be reserved for women. 1/3 would be reserved. So seats are reserved for women. So by default, we will have women parliamentarians or women MLAs whenever this thing is implemented. So by default, we will have this. Now, elsewhere in the world, we have example of Sierra Leone. So where there is a law that political parties like BJP, Congress, all these political parties, so it is mandatory for them to give at least 30% of tickets to women. So they are not reserving the constituencies, but they are saying that the parties should reserve certain amount of tickets for women. So that should be done. So reservation and ticket allocation. So that is one of the approach. Then there is 30% quota for women and youth. But overall, what we see is that in such a scenario, the seats that have the ticket allocation is done in such a way that women's representation, women tend to lose those seats. So the less favorable seats are allocated to the women in that regard. So such issue should not arise in India's case. Okay. Next. Prime Minister is saying our government brought transparency, ended leakages in system. Leakages is also referred to as pilferages. Okay, so what has been done? Let's see. So I'm just doing this. I'm not reading this because there will be so many other things as part of his speech. So this was the main thing which newspaper felt, and obviously this is important. So with reference to transparency, let's forget BJP did this or that. Let's say overall what arrangements are there. So first of all, we have the Right to Information Act. So that is there for bringing in transparency. Then to end leakages, we have these subsidies are given. The subsidies are going into the wrong hands. So for that, the government initiated Jan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity, in which the beneficiaries are required to have zero, no cost bank accounts, Jan Dhan accounts linked with Aadhaar and their mobile phones. So bank accounts are there, and the subsidy is directly provided into their bank accounts. So there is no middlemen as a result. So this has helped end leakages. So the things are basically available at market rates. For example, the LPG, it is available at market rates. So the difference is given into the subsidies are given directly into the bank accounts. So this has helped leakages. At the same time, it has helped avoid the distortion of the market prices, the market forces. Then what else? Several e-governance initiatives of the government that will also bring in transparency and accountability. So we have something known as Pragati, proactive governance and timely implementation. So wherein the Prime Minister, and this was there before this also, this is only renamed. So this is basically where the PM, some senior bureaucrats sit together. They look at the infrastructural projects via video conferencing and talk to the concerned officials on the ground. So this is a good initiative which is linking information technology, is bringing in transparency as well as accountability. Now, why is transparency needed? Transparency is needed because it will help bring in accountability to government. So transparency is associated with people becoming aware. When people become aware, they participate, and by participation, they hold government accountable. TPA. Next, 63% cancer deaths of Indian women are preventable, says Lancet report. But the underlying theme is the gender gap in healthcare. So this article I have shared with you on the Telegram as well. I've shared the screenshot with you. Okay, so 63% of the deaths were preventable. How? If timely screening or diagnosis was done. So that is one issue. Normally when the patient turns up when they are already in the advanced stages where doctor cannot do much. What are the other issues? And maybe you can club this with gender gap in healthcare also. So other issue could be societal apathy. Here they have given a reference of a woman who was having a headache. So she actually had a brain cancer, but the husband was unwilling that, you have headache, that's a normal thing. Why bother looking if even if you die, that was the problem. So there is a societal apathy towards women. If there is there, why spend money? Why go to the doctor? And women, because they do not earn, they do not have they're dependent, right? So they are not able to focus themselves on the healthcare, they're dependent on the spouse. So societal apathy. So that is so she didn't know, right? So and doctor also, the initial diagnosis that was done, doctor said there is something wrong with the eyes. He didn't think that he should go deeper into this issue. That why is this pain persisting? So again, maybe a bias that not taking it seriously what the patient is saying, and eventually, obviously, she dies with brain cancer. So societal apathy, lack of trained doctors, maybe sensitization amongst the healthcare professionals with reference to cancer. So that could be the third point. Next, access to medical facilities for screening, diagnosis, for availability of doctors, healthcare professionals, and the healthcare should be accessible. The public healthcare infrastructure is very weak, especially when we start with the primary healthcare sector. The spending is about 1% of the GDP in the public healthcare sector, so which is very, very less. And if we talk about Ayushman Bharat and all those things, so that comes at a very later stage when hospitalization thing is to be done. And even if that is approved. So there is a lot of shortcomings over here. Lastly, as I have already told you, more women affected are those who are educationally backwards and who are financially dependent or financially less empowered. Now, what needs to be done is to rectify all these points that I have mentioned. Okay. Now, please read this. I want you to read this. Women are less likely to be in a position of power and may be unable to determine their care. They're dependent on the spouse. Additionally, it stresses that patriarchy dominates cancer care research and policy making. So maybe government also focus is also not there. It requires Lancet, foreign company, foreign research agency telling us that this is the problem in your country. This should have been, the data should have been there with the government itself in the first place. Okay. Wahida Rehman gets Falke Awards, Lifetime Achievement Award, that is there for the acting domain. So that this may be asked in your prelims. Read more about the Falke Awards. I'm not able to place the link actually. Okay. Thanks. Anyways, so this is the Adala Sahib Falke Awards. Next article is about government's borrowing, and there is a reference of 50-year bond security. I had shared with you on Telegram this FAQs, right? I want you to study about these different types of government bonds, GSEC bonds, what is the tenor of these bonds, T-bills. The tenor is 91, 182, 364 days. These things can be asked in the prelims, cash management bills. I want you to read this. You refer to the Sriram IS, and these notes are good, by the way. So they are taken from here only. Okay. So government, let me now discuss this. Government to keep market borrowings target of 6.55 trillion rupees for second half of fiscal year H2 fiscal year 2024. So how will government borrow? So government will issue bonds. It will issue a paper, which is a bond. So the investor will buy this bond. Why will they bond? Because they will get interest on it. Right? So when the government, they buy the bond, the government issues the bond, and the investors, from the investor, they get money. Obviously, this money will have to be returned when additional, with the interest, which we call it as the coupon rate. Let me tell you one more thing. The return on the bond is actually known as the yield. Sometimes you may get more than that also if the investor trades with this bond and the profit that he gets on it. So that may be the yield. So it will be the function of the price of the bond, at the same time the coupon rate. Okay, and the bond security can go up to the 50 years. The tenor is 50 years. So normally the tenor of the G bonds, the G-SECs, is from 5 years to 40 years. So you get the tenure 5 years to 40 years. So here it is not mentioned. It says such security that so you read this. Okay, so long term is maturity of 1 year or more. So that is it. Paper says 5 years. This is obviously more accurate. 1 year or more is G bonds. T bills are of shorter tenure. So 91, 182 days and 364 days. So yeah. So yes, I think you read it, it will be clear. Banks ready to collect 20% TCS under LRS from October to 1st. So let me explain. So Indians go to foreign country for various purposes. Let's say Canada for they send their children for studies, or somebody goes to New York for healthcare, right? So somebody, obviously, if you go or on as a tourist, so in that case, Indians are sending money to the foreign country. Let's say somebody's child has gone to a university in Canada. So an Indian family may be supporting this abroad, their child. So they'll be sending their money. This money is sent through liberalized remittances scheme, which facilitates transfer of money from India to a foreign country. Okay, that's fine. Now, when this was introduced, the government said that on these remittances, we will impose a tax. We will deduct tax, or we can call it as the tax collected at source. There was a protest, and thereby it was decided that fine, money given beyond till 7 lakhs will not come under the purview. Beyond this, it will come under the purview of tax collection at source, and this will be at 20%. So now the banks are ready to collect. Previously, when the government announced, the banks did not have the capacity to deduct money and to determine if more than 7 lakhs payment has been done. So now they have the capability. I didn't read this. I missed this. So anyways, we'll do it some other time. Indigo trying to overcome supply chain issues by wet leasing. What is this wet leasing now? So just a second. Yeah. So wet leasing is a term associated with aircrafts. So when the company, let's say Indigo, says that we want these aircrafts, etc. So with that, they will get the manpower associated with that also in wet leasing. So with aircraft, they will get the pilots also, they will get the crew, maintenance staff, insurance, etc. So that is wet leasing. Normally you lease aircraft, so you just get the airplane, you have your own pilots which will fly it, you have your own crew. But because the shortage of staff is also there, so these things are also taken on lease. The manpower is also taken on lease. GST Council to meet in October 7th. Okay. Very quickly, we cover the explained section, substantial imitation and passing off. So there is this very famous channel known as Humans of Bombay, which is actually a substantial imitation of Humans of New York. Anyways, so Humans of Bombay has made an allegation against another channel, emerging channel known as Peoples of India. So this Humans of Bombay, what they used to do was they used to identify people, right? They had short interviews, so they had their own style, which was quite appealing to the audience. So People of India is doing similar things, not copying their content as such, but copying their way of doing work. So this is deemed as substantial imitation. So this comes under copyright infringement. So the court has taken note of this, right? So this is part of copyright infringement. So that is one thing, substantial imitation, that you are imitating somebody, imitating their way, their style. This could be even in music also, like somebody's tone or even a part of it has been taken. Right? So that is also substantial imitation. Next is passing off. What is passing off? When a brand logo is misspelled in such a way that it is not easy for consumer to discern. Here there is an example given of two companies, Cadila Healthcare Limited versus Cadila Pharmaceuticals Limited. You see can you define which one is original Cadila? Similar names are there. So it is difficult for consumers to identify. So this is like consumer passing off that this finer detail. So it is a form of deception, misrepresentation, and this affects the goodwill and reputation of the original owner. So this is the issue of passing off, again associated with copyright infringement. Now let's cover the issue of delimitation also. By the way, the best source for studying delimitation is Election Commission's own website, and where they talk about delimitation. So delimitation is an exercise of defining the boundaries. So as per Article 82 of the Constitution for the center and Article 170 of the Constitution, after every census is to be done every 10 years. So after every census, delimitation, the president, now this is also important information, the president should constitute a delimitation commission, a high level panel which will go into the size of the constituencies, etc., with the idea of ensuring a common population to state ratio. Right, so delimitation commission would be constituted. They will define the boundaries of the constituencies for both Lok Sabha seats as well as the state legislatures. And after this, the parliament has to enact a delimitation commission Delimitation Act, and the constituencies will be changed. So actually more and more seats are to be created as a result. Now, since 1971, there is a freeze on delimitation. There is a freeze on delimitation. Now, in our polity, the idea of allocating seats is based on population to seat ratio. So each seat should be representing a similar number of population, but this has been freezed post 1971 because we wanted states to take measures to check population rise. So to incentivize population rise. So southern states have been able to manage the population rise, while the Bimaru states, the northern states, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, etc., their population has been increasing. So the seat to population to seat ratio has been affected. Some seats are represented in 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs, 20 lakhs. So that thing is emerged. Okay. Now, there is this 84th Constitutional Amendment Act, which was in 2001, which extended this freeze on delimitation till the next 25 years. So it says the next census, the first census, after the 2026, the elections that take place after this census. So then the delimitation has to be done. So the freeze of 25 years was done. Okay. Fine, I hope this is clear. So there is a freeze. Now we want, especially the ruling party wants that delimitation exercise should be done. Okay. Now what? Now the thing is, if this delimitation goes through, the northern states will be at an advantage because they will get more number of seats as compared to the southern states, because their population is much more. So there'll be more seats allocated. So politically, they'll be more relevant as compared to the south. That's the main concern. Okay. And and politically speaking, this belt is now dominated by the BJP. And then the southern parts, they do not have much of political heft. In the southern, they do not have so much control. But in the northern areas, much more control is there. So if the delimitation goes through, they will have more representation in terms of seats. Right? So that is the basic thing. Now, why are we talking about it? Most recently, the government brought in the Women's Reservation Act, that 33% of the seats would be reserved. But this has been linked with the conduct of the census and delimitation. So that means that this will only happen after delimitation, not before that. The opposition parties are saying that you please implement it right away. The representation of women reservation should be implemented right away, but the government says no, after delimitation only. So this means that the 2029 polls may have, maybe the earliest could be 2029. So that's when delimitation can be done. Okay. Now, the opposition bloc, which is non-BJP, so they are opposing delimitation, especially the southern states. But if they do so, that would mean that they are opposing the reservation of women, because this is linked to delimitation. So this is the overall controversy. Right. So that's it from today's news analysis. Thank you for streaming into our channel, IASPrimers, with me, Shubhashish.